understanding aggression really is the key to everything, as I've been saying rather a lot. And you might wonder, someone might wonder, well, what the hell is it about aggression? What is all this stuff about aggression? What's the big deal about aggression? So someone might wonder that, possibly, if they could be bothered to wonder it. So if they could be bothered to think about it, they might get to the stage of thinking, well, what the hell? Why is there this big emphasis on this thing called psychological aggression? And what we can say about psychological aggression is that the reason it's such a big deal is because psychological aggression is what lies behind the world we live in and the personal identity that we think we are. Both who I think I am and the world that I think I live in are both the results of aggression and nothing else. If I stopped with the aggression, the world that I take so very much for granted and think will always be there will cease immediately. And so will I, in the way that I understand myself. So aggression is necessary, if necessary is the right word, to keep up this appearance. And if we were to ask why the hell should we want to keep up the appearance then? The answer presents itself as being pretty obvious. We keep up the appearance because we're afraid not to, because once we stop aggressing things to be the way that we want them to be, or think they ought to be, or have always assumed that they are, then we're face to face with something that we ourselves haven't decided on, and we have no way of knowing what that will be. And so that's the most frightening thing there is, really. It's an absolute lack of familiarity, an absolute lack of predictability. Whatever standards we have, whatever baseline we have, is no longer any good to us. Our way of understanding the world becomes immediately redundant, and our habitual way of being in the world becomes equally redundant. So from one point of view, that's a very big loss. We've lost everything that we take for granted as being the way things actually are, and instead we're presented with something else which we can't make head or tail of, and we can't find any place for ourselves in it, as any place for ourselves as we generally understand ourselves. So instead of saying that aggression is a big deal because that's what lies behind the world appearing to be what it does appear to be, and ourselves appearing what we appear to be, we could equally well say that fear is what lies behind the world and our ideas of ourselves, because it's exactly the same thing. Aggression and fear are the same thing, really. Aggression stems out of fear. There's no such thing as aggression that doesn't come out of fear. That doesn't mean that we can't have fear without any aggression. We could be afraid, but not act on that fear, in which case, because we're not acting on the fear, there's no aggression. But we can't have aggression without fear. It wouldn't be aggression. If there's no fear, no matter what we do, it would have a playful quality, a kind of an ironic quality. In a way, we could say that it's the kind of quality that we could take it or leave it. It's not absolutely necessary that what we're doing be there, but we're just playing at doing it, just for the fun of it, really. Whereas in aggression, what we're saying really has to be the case. So if I'm making a statement that really has to be true, and I'll get very upset if you suggest it isn't. I'll be put out of sorts in a big way. And if I'm trying to arrange an outcome, if that outcome isn't arranged or something gets in the way of it, again, I'm very upset, I'm very put out. Because this aggression isn't playful, it's serious. Only it's not really serious, but it's serious in this particular sense that it's serious to me in the bigger schemes of things. It's not in the least bit serious. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the most serious anything could ever be. And I'm very much attached to what I'm aggressively asserting as being actually true. Even though if I stop to reflect on the matter, I'd know if I'm aggressively asserting something, it can't be true, because I wouldn't need to aggressively assert it anyway. There wouldn't be any need to do that because it would be true. If it's true, no one has to defend it, no one has to get hot and bothered, no one has to get hot under the collar. So if I ever find myself asserting something, aggressively asserting something, I can be sure of one thing. I can be sure that what I'm asserting so aggressively is absolutely not true. Which of course is not something that I want to be aware of. So when we're being aggressive, it's also very important that not only are we aggressive, but we also have to be totally dumb. We have to be totally dumb because, as I've just said, we can't allow ourselves to see what this aggression actually is a sign of. So just as smoke is a sign of a fire somewhere, aggression is a sign of fear. And also aggression is a sign of things not really being what we're saying they are or trying to make them be. Another thing we can say about aggression is that in the ordinary run of things, it's invisible and we have no clue that everything is created by aggression and held together by aggression. And of course that's the way we want it, because we want to believe that things really are this way and the things that I assert really are true. So this is exactly what we want in the state of unconsciousness. We want to believe that the things we say are true, really are true. And we want to believe that the outcomes we see as being important and worth creating a lot of trouble, a lot of fuss over, really are important. And we don't want to see that they're only important because we've made them important. And we don't want to see that our beloved statements of fact are only true or only fact because we're insisting that they are. So really we want to create a world and not see that we've created it, which is exactly what Berger and Luckmann say in the social construction of reality. So that's kind of the main thing they say in the book. And they're not talking so much in a philosophical framework, they're talking in a from a sociological perspective. And what these two authors are saying basically is that what we do collectively is that we create a reality. We absolutely refuse point blank to acknowledge that that reality has been created by us. So it's kind of like we make a whole bunch of rules. And then from then on, it's the rules is the rules, and rules are rules. You can't ever question it. Even though that is dumb because we actually made those rules in the first place and they wouldn't be there if we hadn't made them. But we don't look at that. We just throw up our hands and say, Rules is rules. That's the rules. I'm only obeying rules. And that's the same as the dogmas of religion. We create the dogmas ourselves. And then we act as if we didn't create them, as if they basically, as if they had come straight from God. And that, for that reason, they can't be questioned. And that's a good device. It's a neat trick, because we create a world then, and no one can question that world, because we don't have the temerity to question God. And in the past, in mankind's religious past, it's certainly true that we would have got in serious trouble for questioning God. Very bad trouble indeed. And so that really is not something that's going to happen. So what really matters to us, whether it's through religion or through society, is the creation of an unquestionable reality. A reality that is just has to be taken at face value, and no one can ever dare to poke fun at it or look behind it, or in any way suggest that it isn't the be-all and the end-all and the final reality, etc., etc. When we consider the activity of human beings, not so much the day-to-day activities of sleeping and eating breakfast and going shopping and watching TV or whatever it is you might be doing, but the collective activities, the big endeavours that we put energy into. These endeavours are all examples of asserting a reality and at the same time denying that we're behind it. So that's what we're really interested in doing, creating realities. And it doesn't matter how crude or mean-spirited or oppressive these realities are. We don't really care about that. We just want a reality, something we don't ever have to question. And all of the finite realities that we create, inevitably, by definition, are going to be mean-spirited, oppressive, restrictive, limited, devoid of any creative possibilities. Because all finite realities, or as James Carse would say, all finite games are like this. They're crude, repetitive, lacking in any possibility of creative reinterpretation. They just are what they are. And that's what we like about them. So we will put up with creating oppressive environments for ourselves, oppressive systems for ourselves, environments or systems that deny us for what we truly are. So that's a pretty big thing, to be living in a system that denies us as we are, that denies our actual creative nature. Obviously that's a pretty big thing. We are, and we always have been, perfectly willing to put up with that because of the benefit that we get out of it. So obviously that benefit must be a pretty big benefit. And the benefit is, of course, that we get to have a fixed or defined or finite idea of who we are. So for whatever reason, that is what we really, really want more than anything else. So if I can make a little crude version of myself and say, this is who I am this and I'm not anything else, and I'm proud of it, that is the essential self-assertion that we all want to be able to enact. So we create a finite, restrictive, oppressive system to live in, or environment to live in, so that we can have this finite self to assert. And a finite self it's finite because it's the end of the road. This is who I am. Like it or lump it. This is me. And I don't care if you don't like it anyway, because screw you, who cares? So the thing about that is the finite self, it is what it is, and it never becomes anything else. It's the end of the road, which is to say, it never changes. It never gives way to anything else. It isn't in any way seen as a form of play. That we are saying, well, let's play at being this, see how that works out. Which is, of course, what games are all about. Kids are very honest about games. They say, well, I'm not quite sure what kids play at being these days. A long time ago, kids would play being cops and robbers, good guys and bad guys, that kind of thing. And it isn't really, I wouldn't say any different these days. We're playing at being this character, and then we're acting it out. We're doing that for fun, to see what it feels like. So as adults, we're shockingly dishonest, because we play games the whole time. It's all a game. Everything we say is a game. Everything we believe in is a game. We do it all the time, and we steadfastly refuse to acknowledge or admit that it's a game. So we're playing, but it's not playful play, it's serious play. And another word, or another term for serious play that we never admit to be play, and that we get very cross with anyone who does question it. Another word for that is denial. So what we're really talking about here is denial. And when we insist upon the finite or final self, which is how we all see ourselves, this is an act of denial. It's an act of denial of everything, really, because everything in life is change, and there are no final anythings. That's just for our own convenience. It's kind of as if we get tired of exploring and we say, no, this is it, I'm not going to look any further, this is what it is. Somehow we lose all of curiosity, and we stick, as in a game of cards. We just say, I'm sticking with this. So we're all stuck at a very early age, as soon as adulthood sets in, really. And so then everything becomes about preserving that static sense of self. And so profoundly ingrained is this in us, in our culture, that even to talk about it baffles people. They can't understand what it means to talk about a finite sense of self, because there is absolutely no awareness of any other possible way. And we're brainwashed from the word go by this message that you are this is you. Who are you? I am X, Y, and Z. I am this person. And this is kind of rammed home to us as the most important message, the fundamental message. So as Carlos Castaneda says in one of his books, when we're small and we don't have fixed, rigid, and therefore false ideas about the world, the adults around us insist on describing things over and over again in our environment. So they'll say, this is a tree, this is this is a table, this is a shoe, this is a teacup, this is a and they said over and over and over again to hypnotize us to the effect, with the effect that eventually we look at something and it is that thing. It isn't really, but when we see it, we become incapable of not seeing it as this thing. So everything becomes as it has been repetitively described to us by the adults in our life, under the guise of educating us or helping us. You know, they're doing us a favour by creating a concrete final reality for us. They're doing us a big favour. And alongside this describing of all the elements in our environment, there is, of course, the element which is us in the environment. And so this same kind of message comes along, and it's like, you are this, you are this. And if we happen to belong to a religion, this is used as an extra powerful way of creating identity. You're a this, you're a this, you're a this. And on the face of it, identity seems like a good thing. It's like, yeah, I know what I am now. I'm a this. You know, we love any sorts of identity, whether it's some kind of gender identity or even to do with if we have some kind of a mental health condition, we could use that to define our identity. We really do like having an identity, basically. We really, really do. And it's kind of empowering. It feels empowering, and there's a sense of euphoria. I am this, and that feels great. But following on from this very temporary, very limited feel-good factor, there's nothing. Because once you're it, and there's no more joy after that. You're stuck with it. And what you're stuck with isn't real because it doesn't partake in the universal flux that Heraclitus talks about. It doesn't participate in reality. It's just there as an abstract, fixed thing that doesn't exist. And yet we've bonded with it so firmly that it's all we can ever understand ourselves to be. So it's odd that religions which have and possibly this isn't true for all religions or all members of a particular religion, but overall it's true, as we can clearly see, that under the guise of somehow teaching the truth or liberating us, we are told we are this. We are given an identity. And an identity is really the end of our life, because life has to be a movement beyond the known. Life is a movement beyond the known. And as soon as the known is all that there is, and then in that case there's no movement from beyond the known, then we're essentially dead. We are the walking dead, because everything that happens from then on, it's a celebration of who we're not. It's a celebration of this static image. And this might sound a bit outlandish to say that we're dead when we think we're alive. We're kind of living dead. But this is referenced in the Bible, and in other places as well, even though I don't know all the places where it's referenced. For example, Rumi says, what you call life is really death, and what you call death is life. And this is a theme that we've got it all backwards. So by asserting this identity, that's really the worst thing we could ever do, or anyone could ever do for us. And yet we absolutely see this as the given. We can't do anything in life until we've done this. And even though we don't live in a particularly religious age, at least not in most of the Western world, or not in the global mega culture which is spreading all over the world, that's not about religion. It's more about selling stuff and buying stuff, mainly buying stuff, and the power relations that come out of that. In other words, capitalism. And capitalism defines us just as much as the old religions ever did. And it also makes us believe that it's empowering us as it does so. Okay, thanks for watching.